welcoming you to this week's journey of the conscious evolved man. Today's short introduction is going to be about responsibility and accountability. And I was asked the question the other day, why are you so passionate about teaching consciousness? And I feel in my heart, there is this deep knowing that the more I become conscious, I'm recognizing there is this unconsciousness that literally is here to be transformed. And it feels in my heart, in my joy, in my service to really help you and others is to really help provide these keys, these tools, these exercises where I've learned, I failed, I've been really challenged as a man growing up and never been exposed to what it is to be a conscious evolved man. And so today, I feel like responsibility and accountability are some of the most powerful keys for personal power, freedom, and liberation. For if you just look at the word responsibility, the ability to respond. What would happen if you had the greatest ability to respond to all your fears, your challenges, the difficult things in your life? And what happens if you had the courage and strength to be accountable for those areas that maybe you weren't responsible in your life, maybe the addictions, maybe the pains, the trauma? And so the reason I'm sharing this, because when we bring responsibility and accountability together, it brings this deep level of integrity, trust, and leadership. And when you really look at the men that stand in their fullest and greatest expression of themselves, they have great responsibility and accountability because they own their thoughts, they own their emotions, they own their actions, and they come from a place where they're also transparent and authentic of what they do. And so I find it so important to dive deep into what I call pillars of allowing us to rise and become the greatest version of ourselves. Because I know as I learn these, it only makes sense to share these to help you, to help others, because right now, as we are expanding and evolving to higher levels of consciousness, it also requires us within to take greater levels of self-responsibility, self-accountability. And that's why it's so important to really become aware and bring forth this information so that we can just walk a little easier, become less stressed. Because I know when these two terms come up, personally, it didn't feel too well. Growing up, I really wasn't taught the greatest levels of responsibility inwardly. Outwardly, yes. But the inner responsibilities of when I met addiction, when I met my fears, when I met my emotions, no one really taught me that. And then I was never shown how to take accountability. I was avoiding situations. I never wanted to, be answerable to others, because all of a sudden I felt like if I did that, I would be weak, or I would be looking like I was failing something. So it's so important to understand that when we draw our greatest awareness and our greatest level of consciousness to responsibility and accountability, it allows us to rise in a way that we've never seen ourselves before. Think about that. When you truly take responsibility and accountability, you're taking those unconscious parts of yourself and you're placing them right in the screen. And that can be very scary. That can be very challenging and very difficult. For even last night, I had one of the most scariest experiences happen. It felt like almost a fear of death that I'd like to share with you today. in which I was on this zip line obstacle course. A very powerful chance to step up and show my strength, my courage, my ability to go through some very challenging heights, cables, zip lining, where you're moving. And toward the very end of the course, I had this rope that I would jump on and zip line across. And as I did, I jumped and the ropes got stuck and I hung there. Now I knew my two cables were holding me in safety, but all of a sudden I went into the greatest level of panic and fear because the ropes were all tangled. I was stuck in the middle, 100 feet high, and I could just feel myself enter this fight or flight. And at that moment, I had a choice to look and respond in the actions that came forward. And I really had to see my fears. I had to look at all the discomfort coming up. And it was so challenging because not only was the fear of death coming up, the fear of stupidity coming up, the fear of, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? I had to take this accountability at that moment of like, okay, what am I going to do in my actions right now? Because either I could choose to go into a panic attack, I could choose to go into greater levels of fear, or I could Rambo myself out and jump up and just start walking myself hand in hand through muscle, through scrapes, and just getting myself to the next ledge, because all I knew is I was stuck and I was going through some great fear of death, because when I looked below, I was like, how am I going to get out? Because everything's tangled and there's no one around and it was completely dark. Yet, into the response of the ability I chose to trust, have courage, and most important, believe in God. Trust me, I was praying. It brought this great accountability of how it became my personal choice, my level to say, okay, I'm greater than this and I can move forward. And not only move forward, I knew that I could use the power within myself and just taking that step and that response and that ability to really move forward so that I didn't have to stay in a very painful, scared state. The reason I'm sharing this for you today, in which I'm still moving through right now, feeling a little shaken, is because these are the areas that I feel in our life that's important to look at. Developing higher levels of responsibility of where my fears are, where my challenges are, where my discomforts are. Because when life comes up and presented to you, and oh boy, did it present it to me last night, then it takes our greatest ability to move through them. And I really feel there's going to become a moment where these areas are not only going to show up, they're going to be placed right in front of us to see how we respond, how we act toward them, how we take personal ownership, not only within ourselves, but around ourselves. And so today is going to be a journey about looking at the challenges of taking responsibility, whether it's not able to let go, or the responsibilities that we associate with negativity of work and greater effort, or even the avoidance of responsibility, feeling like it's a burden. The challenges and accountability where we feel if we're held accountable, it may feel like we're being held as a prisoner. Or if we're accountable, we have to meet these fears of being seen. These fears of like, once I'm being held accountable, are people then going to judge me? These are all powerful statements and topics. So for today, I would like to leave you with two powerful questions for you to marinate on. Where in my life am I taking responsibility but avoiding accountability? Where in my life am I performing accountability but not taking responsibility? These are two areas to dive deeper in. And for those that would like to join this beautiful 12-week journey of the evolved conscious man, I invite you in this responsibility and accountability of showing up so that you can see the fullest and greatest version of yourself. You can easily email me at AscensionAlchemists@gmail.com or click on the link below to learn more about this, because it does become the responsibility in allowing yourself to be the greatest version, that which you already are. Wishing you and everyone a most beautiful, blessed day.